Welcome, everyone. I'm very, very pleased to be hosting this conference and also to welcome all of you here, especially visitors from afar. My name is Shumei Shi, and I'm the director of the UCLA-NTNU Taiwan Studies Initiative, and this is the annual conference of our initiative. And I'm also a professor of Asian language and cultures, comparative literature, and Asian American studies. Before we start the opening remarks and the conference proceedings, I am very pleased to invite both Professor Mishana Gomen and Professor Tibusungue Veyayana, who also goes by his Han name of Professor Minghui Wang, to say a few words of gratitude and blessing for us. Professor Gomen is a Tonawanda band of Seneca Indian and professor of gender studies, as well as chair of American Indian Studies interdepartmental program at UCLA. And Professor Tibusungue Veyayana is one of the Indigenous Tso tribe, is of the Indigenous Tso tribe of Taiwan, and professor of geography at National Taiwan Normal University, which is also my alma mater. And he's also the deputy minister of the Council of Indigenous Peoples, which is a government organization in Taiwan. And many indigenous scholars in Taiwan serve on the council. I know Professor Tankun Tansikian also served on the council, right? So I'm very pleased. And Professor Mishana Gomen, please.
Good morning, everybody. Skano nya Mishana nyaga soa anandoaga nia tananoade giase. Here I am following Indigenous protocol to introduce myself. Hello, my name is Mishana, and I am Tonawanda Band of Seneca from Upper State New York area. I just wanted to start with saying Yahweh to the Tomva, whose lands we are on, and also to Shumei and Minju and all the others for supporting this great gathering of places. So here I'm just going to read just a little bit from the Thanksgiving address, or what in our languages translates to words before all else. So in this address, which is a Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address, we open with the people. Today we have gathered and we see that the cycles of life continue. We have been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and all living things. So now we bring our minds together as one as we give greeting and thanks to each other as people. So now we bring our minds together as one as we give greeting and thanks to each other as people. So we usually end each with saying, now our minds are one. So from this, the words extend, and they encompass many other aspects in all things. It's quite a lengthy address, so here I'm just going to give a little shortened version, because we give thanks and greetings to Mother Earth, the waters, the fish, the plants, the food plants, the medicine herbs, the animals, the trees, the birds, the four winds, the thunderers, the sun, the moon, the stars, the enlightened teachers, and our Creator. Now our minds are one. Our closing words in the address are also capacious, as Haudenosaunee philosophies and ways of knowing are capacious in extending of knowledges and relationships. And that's what I hope we do here today, extend those relationships. Our closing words in the Thanksgiving address, or the words before all else, state, we have now arrived at the place where we end our words. Of all things we have named, it was not our intention to leave anything out. If something was forgotten, we leave it to each individual to send such greetings and thanks in their own way. Indigenous thought is often relational, though all too often it is seen as stuck in the past or trivial or primitive in this kind of way. Today here, as we gathered with one mind, I hope we can begin to push past some of those preconceptions. Only now are disciplines beginning to see the importance of this thought, and this includes from the sciences to the humanities to the philosophies that we'll be looking at today. As we gather here today to learn from each other, I hope we do so with a good mind. We thank the Tomva, the original caretakers of Tavangna, Los Angeles Basin in the Southern California Channel Islands, and are grateful to have the opportunity to work for the Traktaron, the Indigenous peoples, in this place. As a land grant institution, we pay our respects to the Honakfatam, the ancestors, the Ahi Aram, this is not my language, so Ahi Aram, the elders, and the Oyuhinkam, our relatives and relations, past, present, and emerging. So with that, now our minds are one. Thank you.
And now I invite Professor Tibusungu Vayayana, Wang Minghui 教授.
Maidan eno deuyunu atu go kakaebu dedo sola bumemeanu ananasi anane ananasi anane ine no anao atu bitotonu edo sola maizo ananasi anane ananasi anane amameoi mahana to haisa maogo amtu aveve home ameru yubutamimu atsi ye teuno tan echi imoi chongfichi atsi mamau tatongi ha o teo yenino ake mamai nei ta Amerika homioi mina Taiwan ho acha po sola soit itsunena emimu matichi hichi ma fefengo ma wangu ma piamu o manzon som atsi so yokoya suna ausnam. I bring the greetings of Zhou from Taiwan. I say a prayer to the God of land of America. That the God of land will take care of all of you, and I wish you have a clear thought, clean soul, and healthy body, and always live in a happiness and a life of animation. Thank you.
Thank you to Mishana and Minghui for your blessings and gratitude. I'm very, very grateful, and I'm sure all of us are. And you have set us on the beginning of a beautiful journey for the next 2 days in our conversations, in our relational conversations. I'm very pleased that this conference and our initiative has been strongly, vigorously supported by our institution, which include the International Institute and the Division of Humanities. And so the Vice Chancellor of International Institute, Professor Cindy Fan of Geography, will say a few words first.
Thank you, Shumei. As you mentioned, my name is Cindy Fan, and it's my honor to welcome you to UCLA and to this very first UCLA-NTNU Taiwan Studies Initiative Conference. I am the Vice Provost for International Studies and Global Engagement at UCLA, and I'm responsible for the university's global strategy and international partnerships. And I also oversee the International Institute that consists of about 30 different research centers and degree programs. One of those research centers is the Asia Pacific Center. And I want to recognize Professor Min Zhou, who's director of the Asia Pacific Center, sitting here. Thank you, Professor Zhou. And also, of course, Professor Shumei Shi. The two of them have really spearheaded this very exciting, relatively new partnership with National Taiwan Normal University. And of course, the staff of the center, Elizabeth Lester, and standing at the back, and also Aaron Miller, assistant director of the center, have done a lot of work. So please join me in thanking them for all the work that they've done. And Shumei has mentioned the Dean of Humanities, David Scaber, who will be speaking shortly, but his support is also extremely important for the success of this partnership. So thank you, David. And of course, UCLA has had a long-standing partnership relationship with TECO, a Taipei Economic and Cultural Office, and I think a couple of delegates from TECO are here, so thank you again for your support, TECO. Now, but without the support of National Taiwan Normal University, this conference would not have been possible. And the president of NTNU, Professor Wu Zhenji, has been not only supporting this partnership, but also personally really committed to it. He's probably the president of another university that I've met more frequently than any other university president except my own. And President Wu has been here on campus at least twice over the last year, and he actually just last week I saw him in Beijing and we talked about this upcoming conference. So his commitment is certainly very appreciated by UCLA. I want to just share 4 reasons why Taiwan Studies program or Taiwan Studies is important for UCLA. One is that Taiwan is very important for UCLA's global strategy. There are over 300 students from Taiwan at UCLA, and there are numerous UCLA alumni, including retired faculty and on-leave faculty who are working in Taiwan right now on Taiwan University's campus or in Academia Sinica or in other sectors. And of course, there are numerous faculty at UCLA who are originally from Taiwan. And we visit Taiwan frequently, and Chancellor Jim Block of UCLA is actually going to Taiwan again next month. And I personally, I think Shumei and Minzo know that I really like doujiang youtiao. So I might actually sneak out from some of the meetings in Taiwan to just to eat doujiang youtiao. The second reason why Taiwan Studies is important for UCLA is that this is an initiative which really exemplifies what a partnership looks like. There's faculty exchange, student exchange, collaborative research, so it's very multifaceted. And I'd like to thank the several NTNU faculty who travel all the way to this campus today to promote this partnership, to participate and promote this partnership. The third reason is that this is a program that is a wonderful example of how a decentralized and large campus like UCLA can work together with units across campus to put together something that's interdisciplinary and collaborative. So the Asia Pacific Center, it's the leading organizer, but there's also Center for Chinese Studies, American Indian Studies, and Center for Japanese Studies are also some of the partners for this program. And as a global city, Los Angeles is extremely diverse, as you know, and so a program like this is also helping UCLA to strengthen its relationship with our diverse communities in Southern California. And finally, I was very touched by the blessings this morning. And for those of you who have attended conferences in places like Australia and New Zealand, you might have witnessed that blessings and of recognition, acknowledgement of Indigenous peoples are a regular part of their events. And I hope that this is going to be a trend in this country. So thank you for setting an example this morning. So I wanted to just close to thank everyone for participating today and tomorrow's conference, especially those who are from the region. We have also scholars and students from other universities from the region, and those who traveled afar to come here. So thank you very much, and I wish you every success and a very productive conference today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Dean Davies Scubber, Dean of Division of Humanities.
Thank you very much, Shumei. I'd like to extend my welcome to everyone who has traveled a great distance to be here, whatever kind of distance you might have traveled. Some of you have come across oceans or continents. Others may have crossed different sorts of cultural differences in order to be in this room. I think all of us have. Here we are together. Like my colleague Cindy Fan, I'd like to thank National Taiwan Normal University, Shida, where I once studied for a couple of years, very happily. I'd like to thank TICO, with whom UCLA has had a very productive relationship, and I'd like to say an intellectually very creative relationship over the years as well. And of course, I'd like to thank all of the members of the staff at the Asia Pacific Center, from the leader of the Asia Pacific Center, Minjo herself, to Elizabeth and Aaron. As Cindy said, we have an extremely good opportunity here at UCLA to create programs that are interdisciplinary, that bring together scholars from very different areas of specialization, and then focus on problems that are crucial for us. In recognition of the expression of thanks that we began with, the blessing that we started with, which for me really focus our minds on what we're doing here during these days, I'd like to offer my own sort of secular blessing on the activities. And I'd like to start this way. I found myself recently in the kind of small talk conversation that you find yourself in very frequently when you're in an administrative position. In this case, it was some small talk at a reception with a number of philosophers from UCLA and from USC. And the question came up of history, the writing of history, and the desire not to repeat terrible things that have happened in history. And the commonplace on the table was, well, one reads history in order not to repeat the mistakes that have been made. Of course, it's a very familiar idea. But the discussion took an interesting turn. I was at pains to point out that, strictly speaking, the reading of history does not prevent our repeating history, not on its own. We read all the time about historic injustices and horrors, and yet we fall into them again and again. I think before we get to the point of using the writing and the reading of history as a way of preventing the repetition of history, we have to start with a sense of what history as research, history as writing, history as communication in settings like this, as a fundamental act of recognizing losses of the past, sufferings of the past, of drawing into discussion through narrative things that cannot otherwise be made up. And these are, of course, exactly the horrors of history that we run into again and again. That function of coming together as knowledgeable people, drawing that information into a setting where we are together, sharing with each other the stories that, in retrospect, and I'm afraid only in retrospect, can deliver justice to the peoples and the individuals who have suffered those injustices. That's the starting point of anything like learning how not to repeat the horrors of history. I think about that a lot right now, of course, for all kinds of reasons. Here on this campus, in a rather encouraging light, I think we're beginning to recognize the space we occupy, the land we live on and learn on. We've begun to make the kinds of investments at UCLA that can continue that recognition of our place in the world, our relationship to the peoples who lived here before us, before the arrival of the Spaniards, the Anglos, and the other people who now live and love this city. The function of a great public research university has to be to preserve a space for conscience, and that has to happen in the humanities and in the social sciences. It cannot happen elsewhere. It is the place where we turn ourselves to look at the past and to think about the things that have not been just. It's the place where we gather the knowledge and bring it together so that we can understand ourselves and each other more completely and with a real awareness of the things that have driven people against each other. in the past. I think of your words, it was not our intention to leave anyone out. Let it not be our intention to leave anyone out. And let the free exercise of faculty governance, of academic freedom, let that be a constant incentive to turn and look to where the stories about what's happened in the past need to be told and need to be retold in order for us to understand ourselves. Indigenous knowledge is a scarce quantity right now. The brilliance of the conference that you've organized, Professor Shi, is that it turns our attention to the distinct forms of indigenous knowledge that do survive here and there, increasingly against immense pressures. The Academy is the place where perhaps we have a hope to preserve and to continue to be in communication with the people who preceded us. So I have the highest hopes for this conference and for the things that may follow on it. I'm very happy that you've come this distance to be here together. I hope that the discussions are lively, because they are, after all, live. We're here together. Let us question each other deeply. Let's ask very good questions, critical questions, and let's go away with strong, knowledgeable relationships. Thank you very much.
Cindy and David, for your support, and to make a plug for making Indigenous studies central to the mission of the university. I would like you to consider that way have an Indigenous studies scholar in every department across UCLA. I think that would be amazing. And next, I'd like to have Professor Min Jo, who's the director of the UCLA Asia Pacific Center and the biggest supporter of Taiwan Studies program. She's also the professor of sociology and Asian American studies and Walter and Shirley Wang Chair of U.S.-China Relations. Before your remark, Min, I'd like to invite Professor Tibusugue Vayayana, who would like to present a historical map of Indigenous Taiwan to our university. So if Min, you would accept the map, and also actually there's also a whole set of books, which then we hope to donate to the library. Yes?
Happy, beautiful. Okay. This is an atlas of Taiwan indigenous people.
Several people to hold it. Yeah.
Maybe. Here is it's a very large. Thing. I'm afraid these are.
How about just the early one? Because
Yes, maybe.
otherwise we don't want to.
All right, break it.
Maybe this is maybe. Yeah. Okay. This is the old map. Okay.
Thank you.
As a gift from Taiwan, as a celebration and appreciation for the establishment of Taiwan Study Center.
Thank
May
you.
share.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tibusan Kui Vayanaya. Welcome all. I'm Professor Min Jo. I'm director of the Asia Pacific Center, and thank you, Ms. Shana, for saying a few words of gratitude from the indigenous people in America. And thank you, Professor Wang, for the beautiful and inspiring and moving blessing for all of us. And thank you, David and Cindy, for their words of support for Taiwan Studies and also for the Asia Pacific Center. And I thank my staff, Elizabeth and Aaron, for being very, very intellectually and also inspiring staff in the center. So thank you all for coming. And I always compelled to say something about our center because our center is restructured and is new, and we are taking on a new mission and height. So I first want to say a few words about what our center is doing. And our center is under UCLA International Institute. We strive to promote greater knowledge and understanding of Asia and the Pacific region on trans-Pacific culture, social, economic connections, and research from historical, contemporary, and comparative perspective. We encourage interdisciplinary work on cross-border, supranational issues such as language and culture, population and environment, technology, politics, socio-economic development, and sustainability in the ongoing processes of globalization. Our center is designated as a National Resource Center on East Asia under the U.S. Department of Education, under the Department of Education's Title VI program. Our center is currently home to UCLA's program on Central Asia and the Taiwan Studies program. And our Taiwan Studies program is led by and directed by Professor Sumei Shi and supported now by Taiwan Studies Lectureship Program funded by the Taiwan Ministry of Education and supported by TICO at Los Angeles, as well as the UCLA Taiwan National Normal University's Taiwan Studies Initiative. And I'm very grateful for NTNU's generous support. And our center is now also trying to launch another program. It's the Greater Hong Kong Studies Program or Initiative, which is now in the process of fundraising. And we are also an academic partner of the Global Chinese Philanthropy Initiative. And this initiative is going on to expand, to promote the knowledge about the contribution of Chinese and Chinese overseas, as well as Chinese Americans, to world economy and peace. Our center's core activities is to organize events such as this, conferences, lectures, public forums on a wide range of topics about and relevant to Asia and the Pacific region. And it is our hope that through events like this, we continue to facilitate intellectual exchange between faculty, students, scholars at UCLA, in our sister institutions locally as well as globally. And we also want to strengthen the bridge between UCLA and the local community, and we try to promote greater outreach activities to the community, as well as promoting international collaboration and partnership. And I feel compelled to say a few words that our programs really could not survive without, or could not even happen without the support of you and without the support of the university as well as the community. So I'm making a plea for your continual support, and your support can come to many forms. One of the most important forms is participation, to come and share with us your ideas and things. And the other form is to come with money. So we just have this investing opportunity brochure for Taiwan Studies program, and it's out there, and it just came right from the printer this morning. So I would encourage you to take a look at what Taiwan Studies program is trying to promote. And last but not least, I thank Professor Shumei Shi for her effort. It's really Shumei who is behind the conference, as well as all the supporters. Let me read out all the supporters for for this program. So our program is organized and co-sponsored by the UCLA National Taiwan Normal University Taiwan Initiative with funding from NTNU, the UCLA Taiwan Studies Lectureship program with funding from the Taiwan Ministry of Education and TICO, and UCLA Center for Chinese Studies, Center for Southeast Asian Studies, American Indian Studies Center, and Tarasaki Center for Japanese Studies. So you can see it's really a product of collaboration. I would also thank our center staff again, Executive Director Elizabeth Leister and Assistant Director Aaron Miller, as well as our student assistants, Joyce Ko and others. And I hope you enjoy the conference today and tomorrow as much as you do the weather in LA. It's drizzling a little bit, but the sun will come out, I can assure you. Now I would like to introduce Professor Su-Mei Shi to say a few words about the conference. Professor Su-Mei Shi is Professor of Comparative Literature, Asian Languages and Cultures, and Asian American Studies. Her main research interests are Chinese and Sinophone literature from all over the world. She is the founder of that field. And modernism, transnationalism, feminism, and post-socialism. She has co-directed the Culture in Transnational Perspective Mellon postdoctoral program in the humanities. She now directs our Taiwan Studies program at the Asia Pacific Center. Su-Mei, thank you.
Thank you, Min, for those wonderful words. You know, I've been offered a private gift of tribal beads from the Taiwan community, and I could accept it privately, but I wanted to accept it publicly to acknowledge the spirit of the gift. So, you know, may I invite Ibao Dadelavan, who is our keynote forum writer, who will be speaking this afternoon, and Faye to translate for her.
身为一个排湾族的人，一辈子就要有一个琉璃珠，好，跟我这个衣服，就是我们平常都是这样穿的。这个琉璃珠的意思，它有很多意思，有智慧，有财富。好，那我们这个当然是智慧了。好，我给教授的这个，那因为。我家里很多，可是我只有带这个，还有这位我给了他这个首饰的，对。
So as a Taiwan native, we for a whole life we need to wear the beads and also the traditional costume. This is what we wear every day. And the beads have a lot of meanings such as wisdom and fortune, and apparently for Professor Xu this means wisdom. Yeah.
那我穿的这件衣服是我部落儿时小时候一起长大的一个朋友，他亲手帮我绣的。那他都是利用他的等小孩子上课的时候，他就一针一线的缝起来，然后帮我做了这一套衣服。小时候的朋友的，我的朋友。
So the costume that I'm wearing today is actually gifted. Yeah, it's actually gifted to me from a friend who I grew up with in the reservation, and she handmade it. He handmade the costume by herself when she had free time in the class.
You know, so much has been said, and so I'll be very brief. I do want to thank everybody, and You know, I won't repeat all the thanks. You know, I'm extremely grateful, Elizabeth, Aaron, and everyone. But I also wanted to mention one name that hasn't been mentioned, which is Professor Nikki Lin. She is the chair of the Taiwan Language, Literature, and Culture Department of NTNU, and she's made our collaboration the most efficient, the most gratifying, and the most just incredible. So working with her has been such a dream. And I'm also proud to say that through her efforts, I have now become honorary chair professor of her department. So that's another hat I'm wearing today. So many people outside Taiwan don't necessarily know that Taiwan is a settler colony. That there are 16 officially recognized indigenous tribes in Taiwan, and many more that are not yet recognized, especially Plains indigenous groups that have been heavily assimilated. While about 50% of the indigenous people in Taiwan speak their native languages, the majority use the language of the dominant settler colonizers, the Mandarin Chinese. And so you notice that when I was talking with, when Iba was speaking, she was speaking in Mandarin, which I can understand. In recent years, first spearheaded perhaps by the decolonization movements of the Han Taiwanese against mainlander Chinese regime, indigenous decolonization has been sweeping across Taiwan, and there is an increasing awareness about indigeneity in Taiwan today, which does not mean that indigenous decolonization has been and will be a smooth process. Struggles are going on the ground every day in front of the presidential palace as I speak. Some say that Taiwan is the original homeland of all Austronesian-speaking peoples, who are about 400 million people in total, including Malaysians, Hawaiians, Indonesians, Filipinos, Maoris, Samoans, and most of the Pacific Islanders, spread all the way west to Madagascar and east to Easter Island. It's the fifth largest language family in the world, but also the most widely spread language family of the world. In Taiwan, the indigenous Austronesian peoples have been subjected to settler colonialism by waves of Han Chinese people from China for over 3 centuries, during which other colonial regimes came and went. In the conference description, you can see this, and I just want to refresh your memory in case you haven't had a time to read it, which include the Dutch Formosa in southern Taiwan, 1642 to 1662, and the Spanish Formosa in northern Taiwan, 1646, 1662, and Japanese colonial rule, 1895 to 1945. So for Austronesian peoples, as is the case for all indigenous peoples living under settler colonialism, colonialism is a permanent structure, because what happens is the 2 basic definitions of settler colonialism is that the settlers come and stay, number 1. Number 2, they become the demographic majority. So once they become the demographic majority, such as myself in the US and Taiwan, I'm a settler colonizer, once they become the demographic majority, it's impossible to drive them all out, right? And so settler colonialism becomes almost a permanent structure. And this is something that of course, Patrick Wolf has written about, and many others. Seen in this slide, those of us who have studied and wrote about post-colonial theory as an academic discourse in settler colonies such as Taiwan and the United States, it might be a form of disavowal of indigeneity and settler colonialism, and can be understood as another settler's move to innocence. And this is the language used by Tuck-Ken Yang in a very famous article, Decolonization is Not a Metaphor, and Wayne Yang will be speaking tomorrow. Or a strategy of transfer, as Veracini has said. For indigenous scholars and activists everywhere, what has been indispensable to their resistance against settler colonization is a centering of indigenous knowledge as an act of decolonization and a way to envision a better world. And I'm inspired to say this from the work of Mishana Goldman, especially, sitting here. And to really make a case that we're not talking about the past. We're talking about the present and the future. That indigenous knowledge offers and continues to offer very, very important and important resources to all of us. And what this kind of, the effervescence of indigenous knowledge around the world has resulted in a widespread indigenous knowledge movement, in short, IK movement, indigenous knowledge, IK movement, not IT, of which Taiwan's indigenous discourse, though little known, is a constitutive part. And this is one of the reasons why I was hoping to bring indigenous scholars and those who are working on indigenous studies together from Taiwan, US, and today we also have scholars working on the Philippines and also Okinawa. And hopefully in the future we could have even broader conversations with indigenous scholars from other parts of the world. So I'm pleased that, you know, everyone I have invited has accepted the invitation, which attests to the felt need of, number one, conversations among indigenous scholars from different parts of the world. Number two, conversations about indigeneity between indigenous scholars and settlers. I'm sure we're all sort of anxious to get started with the program, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce the first panel, which will be chaired by Professor Kazuya Hirano. And we have 4 speakers, and Professor Hirano will be introducing the speakers, and I'll simply say that Professor Hirano is a professor of history here, and his work explores the intersection between history and critical theory. He's the author of The Politics of Dialogic Imagination, Power and Popular Culture in Early Modern Japan, and he's currently working on a monograph on Japanese settler colonization of indigenous Ainu people of Hokkaido. And I'd like to invite the panelists, and we need 1 extra chair for translator. I also like to thank 2 conference translators, actually 3. Linjin Tsai, who is a PhD candidate in Asian languages and cultures, and he's writing a dissertation on settler colonial cultural expressions in Taiwan. And Fei Lu, who will be translating for whom you just met. She's also a graduate student in the Department of Asian Language Cultures. And Spencer Chen, who will help out a little bit today. Spencer, where are you? Yeah, and you're in sociology, right? Anthropology. Spencer is a doctoral candidate in Department of Anthropology. So